Hey guys, this is a video on replacing the valve stem seals on a Lexus IS200. Something I had been putting off for pretty much 8 years since owning the car. The car had always been burning oil and blowing puffs of smoke on startup, and it had been becoming a lot more apparent lately, so if anything it was just good reason to finally get around to replacing the seals. It always seemed quite daunting. That's pretty much why I prolonged from doing it, but I found that once I got into it and really taking my time with it, being methodical, constantly checking everything, it's not too bad of a job. So if I can do it, you can do it. Let's get into it. Alright, so any IS200 owners probably removed the snorkel and airbox a billion times. You know the drill. And do the alternator cover as well while you're at it. Okay, first start draining the coolant and remove radiator. And remove the alternator and the accessory belts. This is just me, I'm just marking the power steering pump just for reference later. I'm just wrapping the old belt around itself to keep the water pump pulley in place, so when I undo the bolts it's not going to move. Okay, to get the timing, I've just removed the spark plug one, just to make it a little easier, and also have a reference of when the piston rises and falls. So I'll just put a little rod in there to indicate roughly the right height when it comes to top dead center. The first notch here, the little dot, not the line, the dot should line up with that notch there. I've drawn a line there to reference with the new belt. I can match up the teeth of the belt. And then here on 0, it's the first notch on the harmonic balancer from the right. There's another notch here, it's this one here. Alright, let's move this pulley. Everything's marked, time it, let's give it a go. Beauty. Just remove those 2 water lines there, just to give a bit more space so when I remove the rocker. Okay, cam removal process. First start off by removing the number 1 cam cap, then lock the sub gear. I think it was an M6 or M8 bolt, not sure. Remove the exhaust cam first by removing the bolts for the caps 2, 6, 4 and 5. Uniformly loosen them, do it in several passes until you remove them completely. Next, do the same thing with the cam caps 3 and 7. Carefully remove the cam. Next, the intake cam, same approach, uniformly loosen the cams in several passes in the order of 2, 7, 3 and 5. Then again the same approach with caps 4 and 6, and carefully take out the cam. So this is where it starts to get interesting. Here I'm feeding some rope into the cylinder via the spark plug chamber. I've used quite a thin gauge rope because the spark plug chamber is quite narrow, and using a bit of a rod to help push it into the cylinder. Once I've got enough rope in there, probably only need around maybe 60 or 80 centimeters of rope, and make sure you've got enough to hang outside of the cylinder so you can yank it out later on and it's not going to get stuck in there. So once you got rope in there, that's when you start to turn the crank over, and you do it gently enough to make the piston start to rise up and sandwich the rope between the piston and the valves. You'll get to feel it where the piston won't want to go any further, and at that point that's when you stop, and you know the rope's holding the valves in place to stop them falling into the cylinder. Okay, so here I'm removing the bucket with a magnet, also using the magnet to remove the collets. You got to be really careful with the collets. You don't want to drop them anyway. The magnet's included in a valve stem removal toolkit that you can see me using there with the lever. It was recommended by a guy called the Nugget Project who was doing the seals on his 1J. You can buy them from Amazon or eBay or one of those places fairly cheap. And for the money, it definitely works a treat. So yeah, shout out to the Nugget Project. So using the puller that's also part of the kit to remove the old seal. As soon as you remove the old seal, it's crucial to quickly check that the valve's not going to fall into the cylinder. So quickly grab it and just feel that it's got tension from the rope and it's not going to fall. So other than that, it should be good. I'm installing the new seal. Seals I bought were DuraPro ones. Here's the part numbers on screen. Bought them from Precision International. Pretty good. So to seat the seal properly, just tap it with a hammer along with the tool that's part of the kit until you hear metal on metal sound, and she should be good. I found it easier to set the collets within the retainer and the spring first and then place it over the valve and then start compressing it and guiding them in that way. Alright, so this is the part that I battled the most with, trying to get the collets back in, compressing the spring and then just kind of feeling them with my finger or using a tool to kind of push them in place. Some of them went in really easy and other times not, so I'd have to take it all out, set the collets back into the retainer, into the spring, and then put it all as one assembly back on top of the stem of the valve and then try again. So a bit of trial and error. So once it's in, just give the spring a few little light presses just to test that the collets are in properly. If you press too hard, they're going to fly out and you're going to have to start all over again. So that's one of them. You're going to have to do it another 23 times. You'll be fine. Don't forget to remove the rope and place it into the next cylinder as you go. So once you've done all the valve stem seals, you can reassemble. Okay, starting off with the intake cam, you want to place it in so that the service bolt that you use to lock the cam gear is directly up at 12 o'clock. Give the camshaft a bit of oil as well as the gear and the journals of the head, and then put the caps number 4 and 6, temporarily tighten them down in an alternate and kind of uniformly fashion, doing several passes. Just get it down snug. And afterwards you can do the caps number 2, 3, 5 and 7 in a similar fashion. Once they're all snug, that's when you can torque everything down to 15 Newton meters. Next, do the exhaust cam. Same deal, give it some oil. And when you place it, make sure that both dots line up behind the gears. And same approach for the exhaust cam, do caps 3 and 7. Then 2, 4, 5 and 6, tighten them all down. And then you can torque them all to spec to 15 Newton meters. Next, do the valve clearances. On screen is a diagram of the lobes to check and the specific tolerance ranges for both intake and exhaust cam. You're supposed to rotate the crank 1 revolution and measure the other lobes. I didn't bother at this point. I didn't have the timing belt on and I didn't want to move anything. So yeah, it should be fine. This is an important thing to remember. At this point, remove the service bolt from the sub gear. Next, put the number 1 cam cap back on. Be sure to use OEM 4-in-place gasket. This stuff is really good. And torque the bolts down to 15 Newton meters. Next, the cam timing pulley. First turn you want to do 35 Newton meters. Then you do a further 90-degree turn. And always use a brand new bolt. Alright, so now we're ready to put the rocker cover back on. But before we do, check all the timing marks and references. I went crazy with references just because I don't trust myself. Yeah. Now put some 4-in-place gasket on the corners and lower the rocker cover and torque down to 15 Newton meters. Put in on a new crank seal. And also the timing gear. Referencing the timing marks, I always use the one furthest on the right and then the one at 12 o'clock just for good measure. Next, put on the timing belt along with the idler pulley. It just seems easier to do it this way. Check timing, just add in some tension to the belt with your finger. If it's all good, pull the pin on the tensioner. Boom. And check timing again, just to be sure. Okay, harmonic balancer, water pump pulley, using the old belt to keep it in place. Put the car in 6th gear, handbrake up, and then torque the crank bolt down to 220 newtons. And that's pretty much it from here. Just put everything else back on, bleed the coolant, and yeah, thanks for watching.